They said she was too quiet to matter, too small to be noticed, and too fragile to survive in a world built for the strong. But they were wrong. This is the story of Imara, the Omega who changed everything with a single whispered warning. The girl who saw what no one else could see, who knew what no one else could know, and who saved the most powerful wolf in the realm without anyone understanding how. The mountain kingdom of Stalvok stood proud against the northern sky, its peaks crowned with eternal snow. For 300 years, the Shadowpaw pack had ruled these lands, their strength unquestioned, their alpha line unbroken. The current Alpha King, Driven, was said to be the fiercest of them all. Warriors trembled at his howl. Enemies fled at the mention of his name. But strength, as Imara would soon prove, wasn't everything. She lived on the outskirts of the pack settlement, in a small stone dwelling that leaned slightly to the left. Her mother had died bringing her into the world. Her father, a low-ranking wolf named Tobin, had done his best to raise her alone. He worked in the grain stores, counting sacks and keeping records. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept them fed. Imara had always been different. While other children played rough games in the dirt, wrestling and howling to test their young voices, she sat beneath the old birch tree and listened. To what, no one quite knew. The wind, perhaps. The rustle of leaves. The distant song of water over stones. That girl doesn't speak enough, the pack mothers would whisper, shaking their heads as they passed. How will she ever find a mate? How will she survive? Her father worried too, though he tried not to show it. You're perfect as you are, he'd tell her each night, smoothing her dark hair away from her face. Don't let them make you feel small. But Imara did feel small. Especially when the higher-ranking wolves passed by, their heads high, their voices confident. Especially when she saw the alpha females, beautiful and fierce, commanding attention with every step. She was 17 summers old when it began. It started as a tingling at the base of her skull, like someone had placed a feather there and was dragging it slowly down her spine. Then came the images, flickering behind her eyes like shadows cast by firelight. At first, she thought she was ill. Fevered, perhaps. Father, I keep seeing things, she whispered one evening as they ate their simple dinner of bread and dried meat. Tobin looked up sharply. His eyes, so like hers, studied her face with concern. What kind of things? Moments that haven't happened yet. At least, I think they haven't. She stirred her soup absently. This morning, I saw old Bessara drop her water jug before she actually did. And yesterday, I knew the Eastern Patrol would return early, even though they were supposed to be gone for 3 days. Her father set down his spoon carefully. Imara, these are dangerous words. If anyone heard you claiming to have visions... I'm not claiming anything, she said quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm just telling you what's happening. I thought maybe you'd know what it means. Tobin was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy. Your mother's grandmother was said to have the sight. The elders called her mad, but my mother always insisted she'd saved lives with her warnings. She died before I was born, so I never knew the truth of it. What happened to her? Imara asked, though part of her feared the answer. She warned the old Alpha King about a traitor in his guard. He didn't believe her. When her vision came true and the king nearly died, they blamed her instead. Said she must have been part of the plot. Her father's jaw tightened. They executed her. The words hung in the air between them like a blade. So I should say nothing, Imara concluded, her heart sinking. You should be careful, her father corrected gently. Very, very careful. The powerful don't like being told they're in danger. It makes them feel weak. And they punish those who make them feel that way. Imara nodded, understanding. She would keep her visions to herself. She would stay quiet, as she'd always been. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The Alpha King was hunting in the high forests when Imara first saw his death. She'd been gathering herbs near the stream, her basket already half full of feverfew and wild garlic, when the vision slammed into her with such force she gasped. The basket tumbled from her hands, scattering its contents across the mossy ground. In her mind's eye, she saw him clearly. Driven, the mighty Alpha King, standing in a clearing ringed with ancient pines. The sunlight filtered through the branches in golden shafts. He looked magnificent, his dark hair long and unbound, his powerful frame radiating authority even in her vision. Then she saw the shadow move behind him. Quick. Silent. And deadly. The blade caught the light for just a moment before it plunged between his shoulder blades. Driven's eyes went wide with shock. He tried to shift, to call his wolf forward, but whatever poison coated that blade worked fast. He fell to his knees, then to his side, his blood darkening the forest floor. The assassin stood over him, face hidden by a dark hood, and whispered something Imara couldn't hear. Then the vision released her. She found herself on her hands and knees beside the stream, gasping for air, tears streaming down her face. The herbs lay forgotten around her. All she could think about was the look in the Alpha King's eyes as he fell. Shock. Betrayal. Pain. I have to warn him, she whispered to herself, even as her father's caution echoed in her mind. I have to. But how? She was nobody. An Omega from the lowest ranks. She'd never even been inside the great hall where the Alpha and his council met. Guards stood at the palace gates, allowing entry only to those with rank and purpose. She couldn't just walk up and demand an audience with the king. Could she? Imara spent 3 days wrestling with her conscience. Each night, she barely slept, the vision replaying in her mind with terrible clarity. She tried to convince herself it was just a nightmare, nothing more. But she knew better. This was real. As real as the ground beneath her feet and the air in her lungs. On the 4th day, she made her decision. The palace stood at the heart of the settlement, built from massive stones quarried from the mountain itself. 2 guards flanked the main entrance, their expressions bored but alert. Imara approached slowly, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. State your business, one guard said, not unkindly. He looked young, probably on his first year of palace duty. I need to speak with the Alpha King, Imara said, her voice trembling despite her best efforts to sound confident. The guards exchanged glances. The older one, a scarred veteran with gray streaking his beard, actually laughed. You and half the pack, girl. Come back when you have an actual petition, properly submitted through the correct channels. It's urgent, Imara pressed, taking a step closer. Please, it's about his safety. The laughter died. Now both guards were looking at her with suspicion. Threatening the king is a serious offense, the younger one said, his hand moving to the sword at his hip. No. Imara shook her head frantically. I'm not threatening him. I'm trying to warn him. There's going to be an attempt on his life. In the forest. Soon. And how would you know this? The older guard demanded, his eyes narrowing. Imara hesitated. This was the moment. Once she spoke the truth, there would be no taking it back. I saw it. In a vision. The silence that followed was worse than mockery would have been. The guards stared at her as if she'd sprouted a second head. Then the older one shook his head slowly. Go home, girl. Stop wasting our time with nonsense. It's not nonsense, Imara insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. Please, just let me speak to someone. Anyone on the council. I'll tell them everything I saw, and they can decide if it's worth the king's attention. The king doesn't have time for every Mad Omega who claims to see the future, the younger guard said, not unkindly but firmly. Now move along before we have to move you. Imara stood there a moment longer, tears of frustration burning her eyes. Then she turned and walked away, her shoulders hunched with defeat. But she couldn't give up. Not when a man's life hung in the balance, even if that man was the powerful Alpha King who didn't know she existed. She would find another way. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from. Now, let's proceed. Imara spent the next 2 days trying to find someone, anyone, who would listen. She approached the pack healer, old Mareth, who had a reputation for believing in the old ways. But when Imara mentioned her visions, the old woman's face had shuttered closed. "Child, you tread on dangerous ground," Mareth had said, her weathered hands trembling slightly as she ground herbs in her mortar. "In my youth, I knew a woman who claimed the site. The pack tore her apart for witchcraft. Literally. She'd met Imara's eyes then, her gaze sharp despite her years. If you value your life, you'll forget whatever you think you saw." Imara had left the healer's dwelling feeling more alone than ever. She tried to catch the attention of Counselor Brehan, a stern man who oversaw the pack's security. He'd been crossing the market square when she'd called out to him. But his guards had intercepted her before she'd gotten within 10 paces, and he'd walked on without even glancing her way. On the third night, Imara stood at her window, staring up at the palace that crowned the hill. Torches burned along its walls, making it glow against the darkening sky. Somewhere in there, Dreven was going about his evening, completely unaware that death was stalking him. "You look troubled," her father said from behind her. She turned to find him watching her with that knowing expression he sometimes wore. The one that said he understood more than he was letting on. "I saw something terrible," she admitted quietly. "And no one will listen." Tobin crossed the room and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Is it the same thing you've been trying to warn half the pack about for the last 3 days? She blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" "Imara, we live in a small settlement. Word travels. Especially when a young Omega starts claiming she has visions of the Alpha King's death." His expression was sad but not angry. "What did I tell you about being careful?" "I know," she whispered, fresh tears threatening to fall. "But father, I saw him die. The vision was so clear. If I do nothing and it comes true, I'll never forgive myself." Tobin sighed deeply, the sound of a man carrying a heavy burden. "Your mother would have done the same thing. She was always trying to save everyone, even when they didn't want saving." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. There might be one person who would listen. But approaching him would be risky. "Who?" Imara asked, hope flaring in her chest. "Cadmus. The king's personal advisor and closest friend. He's not like the others on the council. He believes in things most dismissed as superstition. Omens. Dreams. Signs." Her father's expression grew troubled. "But he's also fiercely protective of Dreven. If he thinks you're trying to manipulate or harm the king in any way, he won't hesitate to have you imprisoned. Or worse." "How do I reach him?" Imara asked, her mind already racing ahead. "He walks the northern garden path each morning before dawn. Alone. It's the only time he's not surrounded by guards and courtiers." Tobin gripped her shoulder tighter. "If you're going to do this, you get one chance. Make it count." The next morning, Imara woke long before the sun. She dressed carefully in her cleanest dress, braided her hair to keep it from her face, and slipped out of the house while her father still slept. The settlement was silent in the pre-dawn darkness. Only a few windows showed candlelight where early risers prepared for their day. Imara moved quietly through the empty streets, her heart pounding with each step. The northern garden wasn't truly a garden at all. It was a path that wound through a grove of ancient oaks, their branches so thick they created a canopy that blocked out most of the sky. Pack tradition held that these trees had been here since before the first wolves came to the mountain. Some said they had spirits of their own. Imara positioned herself on a fallen log just off the main path, where she could see anyone approaching but wouldn't be immediately visible herself. Then she waited. The sky was just beginning to lighten, turning from black to deep blue, when she heard footsteps. Her whole body tensed. This was it. A man emerged from the shadows, tall and lean with sharp features and silver hair despite appearing to be only in his 4th decade. He walked with the easy confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. This had to be Cadmus. Imara stood, stepping onto the path in front of him. Cadmus didn't startle. He simply stopped walking and regarded her with calm, measuring eyes. You're either very brave or very foolish, child, to ambush a king's advisor before dawn. Brave, I hope, Imara managed, though her voice shook. My name is Imara, daughter of Tobin. I need to speak with you about the Alpha King. Many people need to speak with me about the king. They submit formal requests and wait their turn. His tone wasn't unkind, merely matter of fact. What makes you think you deserve to skip the process? Because the formal process takes time, and time is something the king doesn't have. Imara forced herself to meet his gaze. There's going to be an assassination attempt. Soon. In the high forest where he hunts. Cadmus's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest, perhaps. And you know how? I saw it in a vision. Now his eyebrows rose slightly. A vision. How convenient. Tell me, child, who put you up to this? What game are you playing? No game, Imara said desperately. I know how it sounds. I know no one believes me. But I'm telling the truth. I see things before they happen. I always have small things mostly, but this vision was different. Stronger. Clearer. I saw the king standing in a clearing ringed with pines. The light was coming through the trees from the east, so it was morning. Someone came up behind him, someone in a dark hood, and they stabbed him between the shoulder blades. The blade was poisoned. He tried to shift but couldn't. He fell and he died, and I felt like it was happening to me. Cadmus studied her for a long moment. Imara held her breath, waiting for him to laugh or walk away or call for guards. Instead, he asked quietly, this clearing with the pines. Did you notice anything else about it? Any landmarks? There was a boulder. Large, shaped almost like a bear. And a stream nearby. I could hear water running. She closed her eyes, pulling up the memory of the vision. The trees were old. Really old. Their trunks were massive, and the bark was almost black. The ancient's grove, Cadmus murmured, more to himself than to her. He's planning to hunt there tomorrow. Imara's eyes flew open. Tomorrow? Then there's still time. Time for what, exactly? Cadmus asked, his gaze sharpening. To cancel a royal hunt based on the claims of an Omega girl who sees visions? Do you know what that would do? The pack would see their king as weak, superstitious, afraid. His enemies would pounce on that perceived weakness. Better to seem weak than to be dead, Imara shot back, frustration overriding her fear. To her surprise, Cadmus smiled faintly. True enough. But the king won't see it that way. Driven believes himself untouchable. He's survived 3 wars and countless challenges to his rule. He won't hide from the shadows. Then don't ask him to hide. Just protect him differently. Add more guards to his hunting party. Change the location, or do anything. Imara stepped closer, pleading now. Please. I'm not asking you to believe in my visions. I'm just asking you to take a simple precaution. What's the harm in that? Cadmus was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching her face as if looking for deception. Finally, he spoke. The harm, child, is that precautions reveal that you know danger is coming. And if you know, you might be part of it. That's what others will think. That's what the king himself might think. The words hit Imara like a physical blow. She hadn't considered that warning the king might make her look guilty. I'm not part of anything. I'm just trying to help. I believe you, Cadmus said, and he sounded like he meant it. But belief and proof are different things. If I go to Dreven with your warning and nothing happens, you'll be dismissed as a fool or a liar. If I go to him and something does happen, you'll be suspected as a conspirator. He paused. Unless you can tell me who the assassin is. I couldn't see their faces. They wore a hood. Man or woman? Cadmus asked. Imara closed her eyes again, trying to recall every detail. I'm not certain. They moved like a trained fighter. They were quick and precise. But I couldn't see enough to say for sure. Then we have a problem, Cadmus said softly. A vision of danger without any useful details is just fear with imagery. What if I come with you? The words were out before Imara could stop them. To hunt, I mean. I'll stay out of sight. But if I'm there, maybe I'll see something that will help. Maybe I'll recognize the assassin before they strike. Cadmus actually laughed at that, though not cruelly. You want to join a royal hunting party? You, an Omega with no rank, no training, no connection to the court? They'd throw you in the dungeons for such a presumption. Then, tell them I'm something else. A healer's apprentice, maybe. Someone you're bringing along in case of injury. Imara was grasping at threads now, she knew it, but she couldn't stop. Please. I can't just sit home knowing what's coming. I can't. The advisor studied her again, his expression unreadable. Then he sighed. You remind me of someone. She was stubborn too. Got herself killed for it, in the end. I'll risk it, Imara said firmly. You say that now, before you've met the king. Dreven isn't like other men. His presence alone has made grown warriors weep. And if he discovers you lied your way into this hunting party, he won't be merciful. I understand. Cadmus shook his head slowly, as if arguing with himself. This is foolish. Dangerous. Probably futile. He paused. Be at the eastern gate 1 hour before dawn. Wear dark clothing. Bring nothing that will make noise or slow you down. And for the sake of all the old gods, keep your mouth shut unless I tell you to speak. Understood? Relief flooded through Imara so suddenly her knees nearly buckled. Understood. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Cadmus said darkly. If this goes wrong, we'll both pay for it. Heavily. He turned and continued down the path, disappearing into the shadows between the ancient oaks. Imara stood there for a moment, hardly believing what had just happened. She'd done it. She'd found someone who would help, or at least give her a chance. Now, she just had to make sure that chance counted. The rest of the day passed in a blur of nervous preparation. Her father had been both proud and terrified when she told him about the conversation with Cadmus. You're going hunting with the Alpha King, he'd repeated, as if saying it aloud might make the madness of it clear. My quiet little girl who's never held a weapon in her life. I won't be hunting, Imara assured him. I'll be watching. That's all. That's not all, and you know it. Tobin had gripped her hands tightly. If something goes wrong, if they discover what you are and what you know, they won't just dismiss you, Imara. They'll see you as a threat. And threats to the king don't live long. I know, she'd whispered. But I have to try. Now, standing in the darkness outside the eastern gate, Imara fought to control her breathing. She wore an old dark tunic and leggings that had belonged to her father in his youth. Her hair was tucked up under a cap. She looked like a young boy, which was probably for the best. Footsteps approached. Cadmus emerged from the pre-dawn gloom, flanked by 2 other men. One was clearly a warrior, scarred and muscular. The other was leaner, with the calculating eyes of someone who missed nothing. This is her, the warrior asked, sounding dubious. This is the healer's apprentice I mentioned, Cadmus said smoothly. She knows herbs and basic wound treatment. A useful skill to have on hand. The lean man, whose name Imara would later learn was Joran, the master of scouts, looked her over critically. She's small. Will she be able to keep pace? She'll keep pace, Cadmus said with certainty. Won't you? Imara nodded, not trusting her voice. The king doesn't know about this, Joran observed. The king doesn't need to know about every minor detail of his security arrangements, Cadmus replied calmly. That's what he has us for. More footsteps. The rest of the hunting party began to arrive. 10 warriors, all battle-hardened and alert. 2 trackers. And finally, as the sky began to lighten from black to gray, the king himself. Imara's breath caught. She'd seen Driven from a distance before, during pack gatherings and festivals. But up close, even in the dim pre-dawn light, he was something else entirely. Tall and powerfully built, with dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. His presence filled the space around him, making even the confident warriors seem to stand a little straighter. He wasn't classically handsome. His features were too sharp for that, his jaw too hard. But there was something magnetic about him. Something that drew the eye and held it. Are we ready? He asked, his voice a deep rumble that Imara felt in her chest. Ready, my king, Cadmus confirmed. Driven's gaze swept over the assembled party, passing over Imara without pause. She released a breath she hadn't known she was holding. Then, let's hunt, the king said, and turned toward the forest path. The party fell into formation, with Driven and the trackers in front, warriors surrounding them, and Cadmus bringing up the rear with Imara beside him. As they entered the forest and the settlement disappeared behind them, Imara whispered to the advisor, What do I do when we get there? To the grove? Watch, Cadmus murmured back. Watch everything and everyone. And if you see anything at all that matches your vision, you signal me immediately. Understood? How do I signal you? Drop to one knee and put your hand to your heart. It's the sign for immediate danger. Everyone will react. Imara nodded, committing it to memory. The forest grew denser as they climbed higher into the mountains. The ancient pines Imara had seen in her vision began to appear, their trunks massive and dark. Her heart rate quickened. They were getting close. The sun had fully risen by the time they reached the ancient's grove, though its light barely penetrated the thick canopy above. The massive pines stood like silent sentinels, their bark almost black with age, exactly as Imara had seen in her vision. Her stomach twisted into knots. Driven raised a hand, signaling the party to halt. We split here. Joran, take 3 men and circle east. Brem, you and your group go west. Drive any prey toward the center. I'll wait here with the others. As the hunting groups dispersed into the forest, Imara's eyes darted around the clearing. There, she saw the bear-shaped boulder sitting on the northern edge, moss-covered and ancient. And yes, she could hear it now, the distant sound of running water. This was the place. This was exactly where the king would die, if she didn't stop it. Cadmus had positioned himself near the edge of the clearing where he could observe everything. Imara stayed close, trying to appear useful while her mind raced. The vision had shown morning light, which matched the current time. It had shown the king standing alone in the center of the clearing. Right now, he was surrounded by 4 warriors, all alert and watchful. How would the assassin get to him? When? You're trembling, Cadmus murmured, his voice barely audible. Steady yourself. Fear draws attention. Imara forced her breathing to slow, her hands to still. But inside, every instinct screamed danger. It was close now. She could feel it the way animals sense coming storms. Time seemed to slow as they waited. The warriors maintained their positions around the king, their hands never far from their weapons. Driven himself appeared completely relaxed, his posture casual as he surveyed the forest around them. Then, Imara saw it. A flicker of movement in the trees to the south. Too deliberate to be an animal. Too careful to be coincidental. She touched Cadmus's arm lightly, then gestured with her eyes toward the spot. The advisor followed her gaze, his expression sharpening. Joran's group, Probably, he said quietly. They're circling back sooner than expected. But Imara shook her head slightly. It didn't feel right. The movement had been wrong. Sneaking rather than tracking. A deer burst from the western treeline, running full speed across the clearing. The warriors tensed, hands going to their bows, but Driven held up a hand. Let it go. Too small. The deer's appearance had drawn everyone's attention westward. Which meant no one was watching the south. Except Imara. She saw the hooded figure emerge from the shadows, moving with terrifying speed and silence. They had a blade in hand, long and wickedly sharp. They were coming straight for the king's back. Imara didn't think. She dropped to one knee, hand to her heart. But Cadmus wasn't looking at her. He was watching Driven, waiting to see if the king would pursue the deer. The assassin was 10 paces away now. 8. 6. Imara opened her mouth to scream a warning, consequences be damned, but a rough hand clamped over her face from behind. Quiet, little seer, a voice hissed in her ear. Or you'll join him in death. Panic exploded through her. Another conspirator. They'd planned for this, planned for the possibility of discovery. She tried to struggle, but the man holding her was too strong, his grip like iron. The hooded assassin was 4 paces from the king now. 3. In desperation, Imara did the only thing she could think of. She bit down hard on the hand covering her mouth. Her attacker yelped in pain and loosened his grip. It was enough. Behind you. Imara shrieked with everything she had. My king, behind you. Several things happened at once. Driven spun, faster than should have been possible for someone his size. His hand went to the sword at his hip. The hooded assassin lunged forward, blade extended. The warriors surrounding the king moved to intercept, but they were too far away. Cadmus pulled a knife from his belt and hurled it at the assassin in one fluid motion. The man holding Imara threw her to the ground and drew his own weapon. And Imara, still on her knees, felt something inside her crack open. The power she'd never understood, never known how to name, surged up from the core of her being like a tidal wave. The air around her seemed to shimmer and flex. Then she screamed, and the scream carried with it every ounce of that strange power. Stop. The word echoed through the grove like a command from the gods themselves. And impossibly, incredibly, the assassin did stop. They froze mid-lunge, their body going rigid as if seized by invisible hands. The blade hung in the air mere inches from Driven's back. Everyone in the clearing froze too, staring at this impossible sight. The hooded figure struggled against whatever force held them, muscles straining, but they couldn't move forward. Couldn't complete the killing blow. Driven used the moment to finish drawing his sword and drive it through the assassin's heart. The figure crumpled, the hood falling back to reveal a woman's face. She was young, perhaps 30 summers, with the hard eyes of someone who'd killed before. Blood bubbled from her lips as she tried to speak. The old line, "Will rise again," she managed. Then, her eyes went glassy and she was gone. The man who grabbed Imara tried to run, but Jorn's group tackled him before he'd made it 3 steps. Silence fell over the grove, broken only by harsh breathing and the distant sound of the stream. Then, all eyes turned to Imara, still kneeling on the forest floor, trembling violently from the effort of what she'd just done. Driven approached slowly, his sword still drawn and bloody. He looked at her the way one might look at a dangerous animal. Wary and assessing. "What are you?" he asked, his voice deadly calm. Imara tried to answer, but no words came out. The power had drained from her as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving her feeling hollow and weak. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. "She's the one who warned me," Cadmus said, moving to stand between Imara and the king. She saw this in a vision. "I didn't fully believe her, but I thought it prudent to bring her along just in case." It seems her vision was accurate. "A vision," Driven repeated flatly. His eyes never left Imara. "And that?" He gestured to where the assassin lay. That wasn't a vision. That was power. Real power. What kind? I don't know, Imara whispered, finally finding her voice. I've never done anything like that before. I didn't even know I could. The king sheathed his sword in one smooth motion, but his expression remained guarded. You stopped a trained assassin with a word. That's not normal. That's not Omega. She saved your life, Cadmus pointed out carefully. Whatever she is, she used her gift to protect you. Or she was part of the plot and got cold feet at the last moment, one of the warriors growled. This could all be a ruse. If I were part of the plot, I would have stayed home, Imara said, some small spark of defiance overriding her fear. I came here to warn you. I tried to warn you before this, but no one would listen. Because you're nobody, another warrior said. No rank. No standing. Why should anyone listen? Because truth doesn't care about rank, Imara shot back, then immediately regretted her sharp tone when Driven's eyes narrowed. But to her surprise, the king's lips twitched. Almost like he wanted to smile. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. He looked at Cadmus. Bind the living one. I want to know who sent them and who else is involved. As for her. His gaze returned to Imara. She comes back with us. Under guard. My king, she's not a threat, Cadmus began, but Driven cut him off with a sharp gesture. Anyone with that kind of power is a threat until I understand what they are and what they want. He looked at Imara again, and this time there was something besides suspicion in his eyes. Curiosity, perhaps. Can you walk? Imara nodded, though in truth she wasn't certain. Her legs felt like water. Then, get up. She struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. One of the warriors moved forward to steady her, but Driven himself reached out and gripped her arm. His hand was warm, strong, and surprisingly gentle despite his obvious wariness. What's your name? He asked. Imara, my king. Daughter of Tobin. Tobin the grainkeeper? Something flickered across Driven's face. I know him. Good man. Honest. He paused. Does he know you're here? Yes, my king. And he let you come? Driven sounded genuinely surprised. He tried to stop me. I came anyway. Now, the king did smile, though it was fleeting. Brave and foolish. That's a dangerous combination. He released her arm and stepped back. Let's move. I want to be back at the palace before nightfall. The journey back was tense and silent. Imara walked in the center of the group, surrounded by warriors who watched her with a mixture of suspicion and unease. The captured assassin was bound and gagged, dragged along by two of Joran's men. Cadmus stayed close to Imara, occasionally murmuring quiet reassurances. You did well. The king is cautious, but he's also fair. Once he understands you meant no harm, he'll release you. Imara wanted to believe him. But the weight of Driven's gaze, which kept returning to her throughout the march, suggested that release might not come quickly or easily. When they finally emerged from the forest and the settlement came into view, word of the attempted assassination had already spread somehow. People lined the streets, watching in shocked silence as the hunting party passed. Imara saw her father in the crowd, his face pale with worry. She tried to give him a reassuring look, but wasn't sure she succeeded. They didn't stop at the main palace entrance. Instead, Driven led them around to a side door that opened into a corridor Imara had never seen before. The stones here were older, darker. This was the original palace, the part built by the first Alpha King. Take the prisoner to the holding cells, Driven commanded. I want him questioned immediately. Find out everything he knows. Who hired them? Who else is involved? Everything. And the girl? Joran asked, gesturing to Imara. Driven was quiet for a moment, studying her again with those penetrating dark eyes. She stays in the guest quarters. Guarded, but comfortable. I'll speak with her myself once I've dealt with our prisoner. My king, is that wise? One of the warriors asked. She used unknown magic. She could be dangerous. Then, it's fortunate I can take care of myself, isn't it? Driven's tone made it clear the discussion was over. He turned to a young woman who'd appeared from a doorway, someone who must work in the palace. Take her to the blue room. See that she has food and water. And clothes. He glanced at Imara's dirty, borrowed outfit with faint distaste. Something appropriate. The young woman curtsied quickly. Yes, my king. As Imara was led away, she heard Cadmus say quietly to Driven, go easy on her. She's not what you think. Then, what is she? The king replied, but Imara was too far away to hear the advisor's answer. The blue room was nicer than anywhere Imara had ever stayed. A proper bed with soft furs. A window that looked out over the settlement. A basin with clean water and soap that smelled of lavender. The young servant, who introduced herself as Nissa, brought food and a simple but clean dress in soft gray wool. Are you really the one who saved the king? Nissa asked as she helped Imara wash the forest dirt from her face and hands. I tried to, Imara said carefully. I warned him, at least. Everyone's talking about it. About how you froze the assassin with magic. Nissa's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and excitement. Is it true? Do you have powers? I don't know what I have, Imara admitted. Today was the first time anything like that ever happened. They're saying you're a seer. That you can see the future. They're saying a lot of things, I'm sure. Nissa helped her into the clean dress, then began working the tangles from her hair with a wooden comb. The king will want to understand what happened. He doesn't like mysteries. Or threats. I'm not a threat, Imara said quietly. Maybe not. But you're definitely a mystery. After Nissa left, Imara stood at the window and watched the sun sink toward the horizon. Guards stood outside her door. She could hear their low voices, though she couldn't make out words. She'd saved the king's life. That should have been enough. But instead of gratitude, she'd earned suspicion. Fear. Confinement. Maybe her father had been right. Maybe speaking up had been a mistake. The door opened without warning. Imara spun around to find Driven entering alone, closing the door behind him. Up close, in the lamplight, he looked tired. There was dried blood on his tunic, dark against the fabric. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chairs near the hearth. Imara sat, her heart hammering. The king settled into the opposite chair, his movements controlled and deliberate. For a long moment, he just looked at her, his expression unreadable. The prisoner talked eventually, he finally said. His name was Gareth. Low-ranking warrior. Disgraced 5 years ago for cowardice in battle. Apparently he'd been nursing a grudge ever since. And the woman? Imara asked. His sister. Also disgraced, though for different reasons. Driven's jaw tightened. They believed killing me would spark a revolution. That others who felt wronged would rise up and overthrow what they called my corrupt reign. That's madness. That's treason. And pride. And stupidity. He leaned back in his chair. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I need to understand you. Imara met his gaze steadily. I don't fully understand myself, my king. Then, let's start with what you do know. These visions. How long have you had them? Since I was young. Small things at first. Knowing when it would rain. Knowing when someone was about to arrive. They've gotten stronger as I've aged. And today's vision? The assassination? It came to me 4 days ago. While I was gathering herbs by the stream. Imara clasped her hands in her lap to keep them from shaking. It was different from the others. More intense. More real. I saw you die, and it felt like I was dying too. Something shifted in Driven's expression. You felt it? Yes. The blade. The poison. The shock. Everything. She closed her eyes briefly. I couldn't just ignore it. Even though I knew no one would believe me. Even though I knew it was dangerous to speak up. But you did anyway. I had to try. Driven was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. And the power you used today? The command that froze the assassin? I have no idea where that came from. I've never done anything like it before. I didn't even know I could. But you knew how to do it at that moment. I was terrified. You were about to die, and I couldn't let that happen, and the fear just broke something open inside me. The power came out like a flood. I didn't control it. It controlled me. The king studied her for a long time, his dark eyes searching. Do you know what you are, Imara? She shook her head. You're a truth seeker. At least, that's what the old texts call your kind. He rose and moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. They were rare even in ancient times. Individuals born with the ability to see truth in all its forms. Past. Present. Future. And the power to make others see it too. Or in your case, to make them stop. I've never heard of truth seekers, Imara said quietly. Most haven't. The old Alpha Kings feared them. People who could see lies, predict betrayals, force truth from even the most skilled deceivers? That's dangerous. Threatening. So they were hunted. Killed. By the time my grandfather took the throne, everyone believed truth seekers were extinct. Just legends from a darker time. The pieces fell into place in Imara's mind. My great-grandmother. The one they executed for treason. Driven turned back to face her. She was one too, wasn't she? My father said she warned the old king about a traitor in his guard. When her vision came true, they blamed her. Said she must have been involved. Fear makes people cruel. And stupid. The king moved back to his chair and sat down heavily. The assassin today. You didn't just stop her. You used a command. A word that carried power. Do you realize how rare that is? How valuable? I'm not valuable, Imara protested. I'm just a grain-keeper's daughter who sees things. You're a grain-keeper's daughter who saved my life with a gift most people think is a myth. Driven leaned forward, his gaze intense. But that gift makes you dangerous, Imara. Not to me, necessarily, but to a lot of people. Anyone with secrets to hide. Anyone who trades in lies and manipulation. So what happens to me now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That depends. On what? On whether you're willing to use your gift again. Intentionally this time. For the good of the pack. Imara blinked in surprise. You want me to work for you? I want you to help me root out the corruption that nearly killed me today. Gareth and his sister weren't working alone. He gave me 3 more names before he died. And I suspect there are others he didn't know about. Driven's expression hardened. I need someone I can trust. Someone who can see through lies. Someone who can't be bought or intimidated. I'm an Omega. I have no training. No experience with courts or politics or investigations. You have something better. You have truth on your side. He paused. I'm not saying it will be easy or safe. The people involved in this conspiracy won't take kindly to being exposed. But if you're willing to try, I'll protect you. You'll have my word and my authority behind you. Imara's mind reeled. This morning she'd been nobody. Now, the Alpha King himself was offering her a position at court, a chance to make a real difference. But at what cost? Can I think about it? She asked. No. The blunt answer startled her. No. The conspiracy is moving now. They tried to kill me and failed. That means they'll either scatter and hide, or they'll accelerate their plans and try again. I need to know who they are and stop them before they get that chance. Driven's voice was firm but not unkind. I need your answer tonight. And if I say no? Then, I'll have you escorted home with my thanks for your service today. You'll go back to your old life. Though I imagine that life will be complicated now that everyone knows what you can do. He was right. The moment she'd used her power in front of all those warriors, her quiet anonymity had ended. People would talk. Word would spread. Some would seek her out for help or guidance. Others would fear her, maybe even hate her for being different. There was no going back to the way things were. If I say yes, Imara said slowly, what exactly would you want me to do? Help me question the 3 men Gareth named. See if they're telling the truth when they deny involvement. Use your visions to see if there are others I don't know about yet. Be my eyes and ears in places where an Alpha King can't go. He held her gaze. And perhaps, in time, help me build a court where truth matters more than power. The offer was tempting. Terrifying, but tempting. To actually matter. To use her gift for something meaningful instead of hiding it away in fear. But there was something she needed to know first. Why me? She asked. You could find other truth seekers. Maybe there are others who survived like I did. If there are, I don't know where they are. But you? You walked into danger to save someone you didn't know. You risked everything for what you believed was right. Driven's voice softened slightly. That kind of courage is rarer than any gift, Imara. And it's exactly what I need. The words settled over her like a weight and a comfort all at once. She thought of her father, who'd taught her to value truth even when it was difficult. She thought of her great-grandmother, who died trying to prevent exactly the kind of tragedy Imara had stopped today. She thought of all the unnamed, unknown people who might suffer if the conspiracy succeeded in killing Driven and throwing the pack into chaos. And she thought of the vision she'd had. The king's blood on the forest floor. His eyes going dark. That future that would have been, if she'd stayed silent. I'll help you, she said quietly. I'll try, at least. Driven nodded, something that might have been relief crossing his face. Good. We start tomorrow. For tonight, rest. You've earned it. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Imara? Thank you. For the warning. For the rescue. For saying yes. His lips quivered in a faint smile. I have a feeling you're going to turn my court upside down. Is that a good thing? She asked nervously. Ask me again in a month. Then, he was gone, leaving Imara alone with her thoughts and the weight of what she'd just agreed to do. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity that left Imara's head spinning. She met with Cadmus, who seemed pleased but unsurprised by her decision to help. He began teaching her about the pack structure, its politics, its key players and their loyalties. Politics is just another form of hunting, he explained as they walked through the palace gardens. Everyone wants something. Power. Security. Recognition. Your job is to figure out what people want and whether they're willing to kill for it. She was given new quarters, larger than the blue room and positioned in the advisor's wing of the palace. Nissa became her personal attendant, helping her navigate the complex etiquette of court life. You can't just speak whenever you want, the young woman explained patiently as she helped Imara dress in yet another unfamiliar gown. There's an order to things. A hierarchy. If you bypass it, people get offended. That seems inefficient, Imara muttered, struggling with the complicated ties at the back of the dress. Inefficient, yes. But that's how power works. The people at the top like having rules that remind everyone else they're at the top. The hardest part was facing the 3 men Gareth had named as co-conspirators. They were brought before Driven in the throne room, a vast space of stone and timber that made Imara feel impossibly small. She stood to the side, trying to be invisible while the king questioned each man in turn. All three denied involvement. They sounded convincing, their outrage seeming genuine. But when Imara closed her eyes and listened, really listened, she could feel the truth beneath the words. Two of them were innocent, their fear and confusion real. But the third man, a warrior named Keldon, was lying. She could sense it in the tightness of his voice, the careful way he crafted each response. "He's part of it," she whispered to Cadmus. The advisor nodded slightly, then leaned close to Driven and murmured something. The king's eyes narrowed as he looked at Keldon. "Strip him," Driven commanded. "Search him thoroughly." The guards moved quickly. Keldon protested loudly, but beneath his tunic they found a small vial of poison identical to the one that had coated the assassin's blade. Hidden in his boot was a folded piece of parchment bearing a list of names. More conspirators. More people who wanted the king dead. Keldon was dragged away screaming curses. The other two men were released with apologies. And Imara realized with a sick feeling that this was only the beginning. "You did well," Driven said to her afterward, when they were alone in his private council chamber. "Your instincts were correct." "It doesn't feel good," Imara admitted. "Condemning someone, even someone guilty." "No. It shouldn't. The day it starts feeling good is the day you've lost something important." The king poured 2 cups of wine and handed her one. But necessary and pleasant aren't the same thing. Imara sipped the wine, which was richer than anything she'd ever tasted. "How many more do you think there are?" "Conspirators? Based on the list we found?" "At least 7. Maybe more." Driven's expression was grim. "Some are warriors. 1 is a council member. 2 are merchants with trade connections outside the pack. This goes deeper than I thought." "What if they try again?" "To kill you?" "They will. Men like this don't give up easily." He met her eyes. "Which is why I need you to do something difficult." "What?" "I need you to try to have another vision deliberately. To see if you can find out when and how they'll strike next." Imara set down her wine cup carefully. "I don't know how to control the visions. They just come. But you controlled your power in the forest. You made it work when you needed it most." Driven moved closer, his presence filling her awareness. "Maybe you can do the same with the sight. Push yourself to see what we need to see. And if I can't? Then, we prepare for every possibility and hope we get lucky." He paused. "But I think you can. I think you're stronger than you realize." The words settled into Imara's chest, warm and uncomfortable. No one had ever called her strong before. Quiet, yes. Gentle, yes. But strong? That was new. "I'll try," she said finally. "But I need somewhere quiet. Somewhere I won't be disturbed." Driven led her to a small chamber at the top of the palace's eastern tower. The room was circular, with windows on all sides offering views of the settlement and the mountains beyond. A single cushioned bench sat in the center. "Will this work?" he asked. Imara nodded, already feeling the stillness of the space. "Yes. This is good. I'll be right outside. Take as much time as you need." After he left, Imara sat on the bench and closed her eyes. She tried to remember what the visions felt like when they came naturally. The tingling at the base of her skull. The sense of falling forward into a place that wasn't quite real. She focused on that feeling, reaching for it deliberately instead of waiting for it to find her. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, she felt the familiar sensation begin to build. Like pressing against a door that was almost ready to open. She pushed harder, pouring her will into it. The door opened. And she fell. This vision was different from the others. Instead of seeing one clear scene, she saw fragments. Flashes of possibility branching in all directions like the roots of a great tree. In one future, Driven was attacked during a council meeting. Poisoned wine, subtle and slow. In another, assassins came in the night, overwhelming his guards through sheer numbers. In a third, there was fire. So much fire. The whole palace burned while people screamed. Imara gasped, trying to pull back, but the visions kept coming. Faster now. More violent. More certain. And then she saw him. Not Driven. Someone else. A man with cold eyes and a cruel smile, standing over the king's fallen body. You should have stayed in the shadows, the man said to the dead king. Should have been weak like your father. Now, it's too late. The old bloodlines will rule again, and everything you built will burn. The vision released her so suddenly she actually fell off the bench, hitting the stone floor hard enough to knock the wind from her lungs. The door burst open. Driven rushed in, dropping to his knees beside her. What happened? What did you see? Imara struggled to breathe, to speak. Multiple attempts. Different methods. Poison. Ambush. Fire. She gripped his arm, her fingers digging in. But there's someone behind it all. Someone pulling the strings. I saw his face. Who? Driven demanded, his voice sharp with urgency. I don't know his name. But I'd recognize him if I saw him again. She closed her eyes, imprinting the memory. He's tall. Silver hair. Scar across his left eyebrow. Cold eyes. So cold. Driven went very still. Silver hair. Scar. You're certain? Yes. Why? The king's expression turned to stone. Because I know who that is. And if he's involved, we're in more danger than I thought. Draven wouldn't tell her who the silver-haired man was. Not right away. Instead, he called an emergency council meeting, summoning only his most trusted advisors. Cadmus, Joran, and 3 others whose loyalty had been tested and proven over years of service. Imara was allowed to attend, though she was told to remain silent unless directly addressed. The conspirators have a leader, Driven announced without preamble. Lord Vareth. The name sent a visible shockwave through the council members. One of them, a grizzled older man named Corwin, actually stood up. That's impossible, Corwin said flatly. Vareth has been dead for 15 years. You killed him yourself after he tried to overthrow your father. I thought I killed him, Driven corrected grimly. Apparently, I was wrong. The description matches perfectly. And it would explain why this conspiracy feels so organized. So patient. Vareth always did know how to play the long game. Cadmus leaned forward, his expression troubled. If Vareth is truly alive and behind this, he's been hiding for over a decade. Planning and building support. That level of dedication suggests he won't stop until you're dead, or he is. Then we make sure it's him, Driven said coldly. How? Joran asked. We don't even know where he is. Driven's eyes moved to Imara. Can you see him again? Find out where he's hiding? She wanted to say no. The last vision had left her drained and shaken. But the look on the king's face, the mixture of determination and something that might have been fear, made her nod. I can try. This time, she didn't need the tower room. She closed her eyes right there at the council table, reached for the sight, and pushed. The vision came faster this time, as if it had been waiting for her. She saw Lord Vareth standing in a cave deep in the mountains. No, not just any cave. The old silver mines that had been abandoned 50 years ago when the veins ran dry. He was speaking to a group of perhaps 20 people, all armed, all wearing expressions of fierce loyalty. The king thinks he's safe because he caught a few of our outer circle, Vareth was saying. But he doesn't understand. We are everywhere. In his guard. In his council. In his very walls. And tomorrow night, during the full moon gathering, we strike all at once. He won't survive this time. Tomorrow night. The full moon. Imara pulled back from the vision, gasping. The old silver mines, she said quickly. That's where he is. And they're planning to attack tomorrow during the full moon celebration. Multiple assassins. Coordinated. The council erupted in overlapping voices, everyone talking at once. Driven raised a hand for silence. Then we move first. Tonight. We take the fight to them before they can bring it to us. He looked around the table. Joran, gather 50 of our best warriors. Tell no one else where we're going or why. If Vareth has spies in our ranks, I want them kept in the dark until it's too late to warn him. And the full moon celebration tomorrow? Cadmus asked. If we cancel it, people will panic. If we don't, and something goes wrong tonight, we don't cancel it. We increase security quietly and carry on as planned. Driven's jaw set. I won't give Vareth the satisfaction of making me hide. Imara found her voice. Let me come with you. To the mines. If there are more visions, more warnings, you'll need me there. Absolutely not, Driven said immediately. This will be a battle. You're not trained for combat. I wasn't trained to stop assassins with my voice either, but I did it anyway, Imara shot back, surprising herself with her boldness. You said I was stronger than I realized. Let me prove it. The king studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. You're going to be in trouble, aren't you? Probably, she admitted. Fine. But you stay behind the main force. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They moved out at midnight, 50 warriors dressed in dark clothing, their weapons muffled to prevent any betraying sounds. Imara wore borrowed armor that was too big for her, but Nissa had helped adjust it as best she could. The journey to the old mines took 3 hours of hard climbing through treacherous mountain paths. By the time they arrived, the moon was high overhead, casting silver light across the rocky landscape. Driven signaled for everyone to halt. Ahead, the entrance to the mine yawned like a mouth in the mountainside. 2 guards stood watch, clearly bored and not expecting company. Joran and 2 of his best moved forward silently, taking out the guards before they could raise an alarm. The way was clear. But as they prepared to enter the mine, Imara felt another vision beginning. This one was different. Urgent. Immediate. Wait, she whispered urgently to Driven. Something's wrong. What? The vision hit her like a physical blow. She saw the mine interior, saw Vareth and his followers, but they weren't planning. They were waiting. Prepared. As if they'd known the attack was coming. It's a trap, Imara gasped. They knew we'd come. Someone told them. Driven's expression darkened. He turned to his warriors, scanning their faces. Who? Who here is the traitor? The men looked at each other uneasily. No one spoke. Then Imara felt it. That same sense of wrongness she'd felt with Keldon. She turned slowly, following the feeling, until her eyes landed on one of Joran's lieutenants. A man named Brescian who'd served for years without question. Him, she said quietly, pointing. Brescian's face went white, then red. The girl's lying. She's the one who can't be trusted, not me. But Driven was already moving. He grabbed Brescian by the throat, lifting the larger man off the ground with terrifying ease. How long have you been selling me out? Brescian struggled, his hands clawing at the king's grip. When he realized he couldn't break free, he laughed. A horrible, broken sound. Long enough. Vareth promised me command of the southern territories after you fell. Real power. Not just your scraps. Driven threw him to the ground hard enough that Imara heard bones crack. Joran, bind him. He'll stand trial after we deal with Vareth. He turned to the rest of the warriors. They know we're coming. Which means we adapt. Imara, can you see inside? Find me another way in? She closed her eyes, reached for the sight one more time. Her head was pounding now, the repeated visions taking their toll, but she pushed through the pain. There. A collapsed section of tunnel on the western side. It looked impassable, but if someone small and determined could squeeze through. I found something, she said. But it's tight. Only 1 or 2 people could fit at a time. Show me. They circled around to the western side of the mine. Sure enough, there was a gap in the collapsed rock, barely visible in the moonlight. Driven tested it with his hand, then shook his head. I won't fit. But you might. Imara's heart sank. You want me to go in alone? Not alone. I'll send Nyari with you. He gestured to a small, wiry warrior who'd been silent throughout the journey. She's the best scout we have. The 2 of you slip in through this passage, creating a distraction from the inside. Draw Veritha's attention. While they're focused on you, the rest of us will hit the main entrance hard and fast. That's suicide, Cadmus protested. You're sending 2 people against 20 or more. I'm sending 2 people to create chaos, not to fight, Driven corrected. Imara, can you do another command? Like you did in the forest? Imara touched her chest, feeling for that wellspring of power she'd tapped into before. It was there, but faint. Exhausted. Maybe. Once. But I don't think I could hold it long. Once might be enough. Nyari, when Imara uses her power, you start the distraction. Knock over lanterns. Set fires. Make them think we're attacking from multiple directions. Can you do that? The small warrior grinned fiercely. Make chaos? That I can do. Then, let's end this. Imara and Nyari squeezed through the gap in the rocks, the stones scraping against Imara's armor. For several terrifying moments, she thought she'd gotten stuck, but Nyari pulled her through from the other side. They emerged into a tunnel that sloped downward into darkness. Somewhere below, Imara could hear voices. See flickering lamplight. Stay behind me, Nyari whispered. Step where I step. Touch nothing. They crept forward carefully, every nerve in Imara's body screaming that this was madness. But she'd come too far to turn back now. The tunnel opened into a large natural cavern that had been reinforced with timber supports. At least 25 people filled the space, armed and armored, all facing the main entrance where they expected Driven's attack. And there, standing on a raised platform of stone, was Lord Verith. Even from this distance, his cold eyes seemed to gleam with anticipation. He'll come soon, Verith was saying to his followers. The young king is brave and foolish in equal measure. He can't resist a direct confrontation. When he enters, we collapse the tunnel behind him. Trap him inside. Then we take our time killing him and anyone loyal enough to have followed him to his death. Imara felt sick. If Driven had come through the main entrance as planned, he would have walked into exactly the trap Verith described. She looked at Nyari and nodded. It was time. Nyari moved like smoke, quick and silent, working her way along the cavern's edge. She reached the first lantern and tipped it over, spilling burning oil across the floor. Then the second. Then the third. Fire bloomed in 3 different locations, and the conspirators shouted in alarm, spinning to face this unexpected attack from within their own stronghold. Now! Nyari yelled. Imara stepped into the open, every eye turning to her. She saw Veritha's face register shock, then recognition, then fury. The little seer, he snarled. How fitting that you'll die here with your king. Imara reached deep inside herself, to that place where her power lived. She felt it stir, weak but willing. She opened her mouth and let it pour out. Stop. The command crashed through the cavern like thunder. A dozen of Veritha's followers froze in their tracks, their bodies locked in place by invisible force. But not all of them. And not Verith himself. The man's face twisted in rage as he fought against her power and broke free. Kill her, he roared. The unfrozen conspirators charged. Nyari intercepted 2 of them, her blades flashing in the firelight. But there were too many. Then, the main entrance exploded inward as Driven and his warriors poured through, battle cries echoing off the stone walls. The cavern became chaotic. Steel rang against steel. Men shouted and screamed. The fires Nyari had set spread, filling the air with smoke. Imara saw Vareth leap down from his platform and begin fighting his way toward Driven. The 2 men circled each other like wolves, their hatred tangible even from a distance. You should be dead, Driven growled. So should you, Vareth replied. How many times must I kill you before you stay down, boy? They clashed, their swords meeting with a sound like breaking bells. Both men were skilled, powerful, evenly matched. But Driven had something Vareth didn't. He had something worth fighting for. The king pressed his attack, driving Vareth back step by step. The older man's face showed strain, then fear, then desperation. This changes nothing. Vareth screamed. Even if you kill me, others will rise. You can't stop them all. Watch me, Driven said, and drove his blade through Vareth's heart. The old lord fell, blood spreading beneath him like dark wings. His cold eyes stared at nothing. Around them, the remaining conspirators saw their leader fall and lost their will to fight. Some surrendered. Others tried to flee but were captured by Joran's warriors. Within minutes, it was over. Driven turned, his face and armor splattered with blood, and his eyes found Imara across the cavern. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then, he crossed the space between them in long strides. You're hurt, he said, noticing blood on her arm where one of the conspirators had gotten close enough to slice her. It's not deep, she assured him, though now that the battle was over, it did hurt quite badly. You were supposed to stay behind the main force, he said, but there was no anger in his voice. Almost the opposite. I was exactly where I needed to be, Imara replied. We both were. Driven reached out and gently touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a smudge of soot. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that Imara's breath caught. You saved me again, he said quietly. Twice in less than a week. I'm going to run out of ways to thank you. You could start by not getting in situations where you need saving, Imara suggested, trying to lighten the suddenly heavy moment. The king laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. I'll work on that, he said. Behind them, Cadmus cleared his throat pointedly. My king, we should move. This place isn't stable, and the fires are spreading. Driven nodded but didn't take his eyes off Imara. Can you walk? Yes. Then, let's go home. The journey back down the mountain took longer than the climb up, slowed by prisoners and wounded warriors. But there was a lightness to the group despite the hard fight. They won. The conspiracy was broken. The king was safe. As dawn broke over the settlement, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Imara found herself walking beside Driven at the head of the column. What happens now with the prisoners and the court? She asked. Trials. Sentences. And reforms. Driven glanced at her and said further, and I'm going to need someone to help me figure out who can be trusted going forward. Someone who can see through lies and recognize the truth. You want me to stay, Imara said, understanding. I want you to stay, he confirmed. Not as a tool or a weapon, but as an advisor. A voice I can trust when everyone else is telling me what they think I want to hear. He paused. And maybe, eventually, as something more than that. Imara's heart stuttered. Something more? I realize this is sudden. I realize you barely know me beyond my title. But these past few days, watching you risk everything for what you believed was right, seeing your courage and your power and your kindness even in the darkest moments. Driven shook his head as if amazed by his own words. You're extraordinary, Imara. And I'd like the chance to get to know you better. If you're willing. 1,000 responses flew through Imara's mind. She was nobody. He was the Alpha King. This couldn't work. This couldn't possibly work. But then, she remembered something her father had once told her. That her mother had said yes to him even though everyone thought they were mismatched. That sometimes the best things in life were the ones that made no sense on paper. "I'm willing," she said quietly. "But I'm still going to call you out when you're wrong. And I'm still going to speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable." "I wouldn't want you any other way," Driven said, and his smile was like the sunrise. They walked in comfortable silence after that, the settlement drawing closer with every step. Imara thought about everything that had changed in just a few short days. She'd gone from invisible Omega to the person who'd saved the Alpha King's life twice. From powerless to powerful. From silent to heard. But more than that, she'd found her purpose. Her place in a world that had always seemed too big and too dangerous for someone like her. She'd found where she belonged. As they passed through the settlement gates, people emerged from their homes to see the returning warriors. When they caught sight of the prisoners, of Lord Veritha's body being carried on a litter, a cheer went up. The king was safe. The threat was ended. And life could continue. Imara saw her father in the crowd, his face streaked with relieved tears. She broke from the column and ran to him, letting him wrap her in a tight hug. "I thought I'd lost you," Tobin whispered into her hair. "When you didn't come home, when word came of the battle." "I'm fine, father. I'm safe." She pulled back to look at him. "And I have so much to tell you." "Later," he said, smiling through his tears. "For now, I'm just glad you're alive." The full moon celebration that night was unlike any the pack had ever experienced. Instead of the formal, subdued gathering usually held in the Great Hall, Driven opened the palace grounds to everyone. High-ranking and low-ranking wolves mingled together, sharing food and drink and stories of the battle. Imara stood on a balcony overlooking the festivities, still wearing the borrowed armor because she hadn't had time to change. She was exhausted, her body aching from the visions and the fight, but she felt more alive than ever before. "You should be down there," Cadmus said, appearing beside her. "They want to see you. The girl who saved the king." "I don't need recognition," Imara replied. "I just wanted to help." "I know. That's what makes you perfect for this." The advisor handed her a cup of wine. "The king told me what he said to you. About wanting you to stay. To be more than just an advisor." Imara felt her cheeks heat. Word travels fast. "In a royal court?" "Always." Cadmus smiled. "For what it's worth, I think it's a good match. He needs someone who won't be intimidated by his title. Someone who'll tell him the truth even when it's hard to hear. And you need someone who'll protect you while you learn to protect yourself. Is that really what you think? Or are you just being diplomatic?" "I think," Cadmus said carefully, "that I've watched Driven rule for 12 years. I've seen him be strong and fierce and sometimes ruthless when necessary. But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Like you're something precious and surprising all at once." Before Imara could respond, Driven himself emerged onto the balcony. He'd finally changed out of his battle-stained clothes into formal attire, though his hair was still damp from washing. "Cadmus, stop monopolizing my favorite truth-seeker," he said lightly. "Your only truth-seeker, you mean," the advisor corrected with a smile. "I'll leave you two to talk. I have prisoners to interrogate." After he left, Driven moved to stand beside Imara at the railing. Below, the celebration continued, loud and joyful. "Are you regretting your decision yet?" he asked. "To stay?" "It hasn't even been a full day," Imara pointed out. "Give me at least a week before I start having regrets." He laughed. "Fair enough. Though I should warn you, court life is about to get complicated. Once word spreads about what you can do, about what you are, people will seek you out. Some for help. Some to test you. Some try to use you. Let them try, Imara said with more confidence than she felt. I have the Alpha King on my side, don't I? You do, Driven confirmed. Always. He paused, then added quietly, I meant what I said earlier. About wanting to know you better. About seeing where this could go between us. I know you did. Imara turned to face him fully. And I meant what I said too. I'm willing to try. But you need to understand something. I'm still learning who I am. What I can do. What I want. I'm not going to be easy or simple or convenient. Good, Driven said, his dark eyes warm. Easy and simple are boring. I want real. I want true. And I want you, exactly as you are. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't, he took her hand in his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. So where do we go from here? Imara asked. Forward, Driven said simply. Together. One day at a time. One truth at a time. Until we build something neither of us expected but both of us need. Imara looked down at their joined hands, then up at his face. At the man who'd been a distant, powerful figure just days ago and who now felt like something else entirely. Something that might, given time and trust, become exactly what he'd suggested. Something more. Forward sounds good, she said softly. Below them, the celebration continued into the night. Above them, the full moon hung heavy and silver in the sky, bearing witness to promises made and futures beginning. And for the first time in her life, Imara wasn't afraid of what tomorrow might bring. Because she'd learned something important over these past few days. Sometimes, the quiet ones were the strongest. Sometimes, the powerless held the most power. And sometimes, a shy Omega girl could save an Alpha King and find her own strength in the process. The story was far from over. There would be more challenges, more threats, and more truths that needed revealing. But standing there with Driven's hand in hers and the whole pack celebrating below, Imara knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was exactly where she was meant to be. And that was enough.